So today we have Josh Allen as our guest, a CRO at our labs. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Sammy. I appreciate the invite. Happy to join. And yeah, this will be a lot of fun.
Definitely. I'm absolutely sure of that. So before we dive deep into sales and marketing topics, I want to ask you some personal questions.
Okay.
So that we get to know you. So where are you living?
So I am just north of Boston, Massachusetts. So I'm about 15 miles north of the city. But I'm born and raised in this area. I'm the son of a lobster fisherman who's been fishing here locally for a long time, and I'm the first person in 4 generations of my family to not be a lobster fisherman. So it's which is wonderful. If I had one goal when I was a kid, it was to not be a lobster fisherman growing up. So it's so we've been in this area for a long time and come from a New England fishing family. So yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, then it's an entrepreneurial family, no?
Yeah, I mean, my dad inherited his business from his dad, who inherited it from his dad when they were up in Canada and Nova Scotia, and so it's just kind of rolled through. And my dad was the captain of his boat for pretty much his entire career, and now he fishes for fun. So it's he's retired, formally retired, but fishes for fun.
Do you also fish for fun?
I do now. Yeah, I'll tell anybody, he's the hardest boss I've ever worked for in my life by far. And, but now I can go out with him and we can fish for fun because he's not worried about having to put food on the table with his catch.
That's amazing. Really cool. Yeah. So what do you love to do outside of work?
Well, I've got a few hobbies. I mean, I'm kind of a little bit of a fitness fanatic. Between CrossFit and running, I got into CrossFit years ago, actually after a back injury, and it was recommended as a way to kind of solidify my core and just kind of build up a base so that you protect yourself from injury, because it's a fitness methodology built around functional fitness. I got into running long distance for the first time last year when I was actually training for the Boston Marathon, which ended up getting canceled for the first time in its 124-year history, but ran it virtually anyway in September, and so had some fun doing that. I play a little bit of guitar on the side. I'd say I'm a chords guitar player, and I play just to be able to sing some songs that I like. But and then I have 2 young daughters who are 9 and 11 years old, and my wife. We've been married for 14 years now, so spend a lot of time with them, which is nice.
Perfect. And I know that you also own a fitness studio. How come?
I do. Yeah, it's so there's a local CrossFit gym here called CrossFit 128 because it's based right off the highway here, and I had been a member there for a couple of years, and the owner was moving out to the West Coast, and she decided to sell the business, and so another member and I, we wanted to really kind of keep what is a great community and great culture in the fitness gym, and we decided to make an offer and buy the gym, and so we've owned it for the last 2.5 years, and it's really a passion project more than anything. I mean, to spend, I'm in there 4 or 5 days a week, and we've just got such a great group of people who are like-minded and hardworking and support each other. So it's awesome. It's a pretty cool community.
Perfect. That's really, I mean, at the end, I'm going to ask you, because maybe there are some listeners close to you, if you have some discount for someone who wants to test it out. Yeah. So yeah, maybe we get some more people there.
That you can come check it out for free. If you want to just come
Awesome.
Do a drop in and check out the gym, you can come for free. So we welcome any and all to come in.
What's the website? Do you have a special website there?
Yeah, it's CrossFit128.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Now let's go to the professional side
Yes.
of our talk. Tell me about the company you work for, OWL Labs. What are they doing?
Yeah, so I joined OWL Labs not too long ago, actually in October. And OWL Labs, it's interesting because the company was founded trying to solve this problem of creating a more immersive meeting environment. So what you find in many conference rooms is that they either have one of those big expensive setups that creates kind of the bowling alley down the middle of the conference room table, or if it's a smaller room, they don't have a setup at all to be able to have a video conference. And so our founders, Mark and Max, who had been at iRobot together, decided to come and start the business to solve this problem, to create an experience where if you were having a meeting in a room, you didn't have to kind of twist the laptop to get it on somebody so you could see their face. And so they came up with this camera, speaker, and microphone that has a 360-degree camera and an AI-fueled attention system, so that depending on who's moving or speaking in the room, the camera will move and highlight the participants that are active. And so if you're on the other end of it as the remote participant, you really get a feeling for what's going on in the room. You can understand who's involved. You can see body language if somebody has their arms crossed or if they have their head like this and are bored. So you can really understand what's happening. And I think in today's world where we are on so many video conference meetings and interacting with our peers, clients, coworkers, to be able to feel like you're more immersed in what's happening wherever the meeting is being centered or headquartered, it's more important than ever. So our technology is really there to support that immersive meeting environment.
And it's called Owl Labs because it looks like an owl, no?
It does look like an owl, and actually, when you turn it on, the eyes will light up. It's amazing how much it looks like an owl. The eyes light up, and it hoots for you, so it lets you know when it's ready to go. But it's a fun product. I think it's something that has proven cross-culturally to be accepted. So it's been big in the U.S. market, but it's also gained incredible traction throughout Europe. And the Japanese market has adopted it here in the last really 6 months or so, and the product has taken off there pretty quickly. So we're having a lot of fun across the globe.
Yeah, and it's a venture-backed business, and you're fast growing.
Yes, we're venture backed. We are very fast growing. It's this is the period in time in the company's history where we've sort of exited the startup phase. If you define the startup phase as working through product market fit to make sure you have something that is solving a differentiated problem, we have proven that we have that. We've moved into the scale phase, which is really about the repeatability. So you're building out process, you're hiring out the right people to support that growth, and you're bringing in a level of experience that has seen that scale before, so they can repeat the best practices and things that they had seen in the past. So that's where we are today. We're moving fast into the scale phase, which is, it's my favorite part of a company's history, is when you get to build all of the foundational pieces underneath so that the company can build on top of it for years and years to come.
Mm-hmm. So you're basically building the sales engine right now. And that's my next question. What is your exact job at Owl Labs?
So my responsibility, so it's my title is Chief Revenue Officer, but I'm also completely aware that that means very different things in different businesses. So my responsibility is I oversee essentially the customer journey, which starts from within our marketing team. So if you think about it from a brand awareness kind of top of funnel and getting people to understand who Owl Labs is, what we do, and why we're different. We have a wonderful marketing team that has really done incredible work to get the brand to where it is today, and to go through the type of growth we went through in 2020, and to have the type of recognition we have not only domestically but globally now is really wonderful. So it's following the customer journey, starting with marketing, which is everything from brand to content to demand generation and leads and pipeline. Goes into the sales organization, which is sales development. So we're actually just introducing a sales development team to be able to better qualify some of the leads that are coming in and start to reach out to some of the target accounts we want to break into. Account managers, account executives. We have a customer success team. So as the customer moves through the sales process and they start to use their owls, being able to work with our customer success team for proper onboarding, training, implementation, making sure that everything's working as it's supposed to, and then potentially introducing them in the future to additional products and services that we have to offer as a company that may improve their experience. And then our technical support team, which is, whenever any challenges come up, they can call into us and get an answer pretty quickly. So it's overseeing all of those functions as we scale up here.
That's super interesting. So you're basically building the whole marketing, sales, and customer success organization. And I think that's interesting because I don't know if a lot of companies have this overarching position. So you see a lot of CMO and chief sales officer, and then maybe the customer success is within the sales organization, but owning the whole journey has a lot of benefits, I assume, and we will talk about it definitely over the course of our conversation. But what would you say is the biggest advantage of having all of those crucial parts of the customer journey in one hand?
Yeah, and it was a top criteria, or I should say, arguably the top criterion for me when choosing my next role was to have that span of control, and not from an ownership standpoint that I wanted to have all these businesses. It was more because I've seen it work in the past where it creates the connective tissue and the continuity of the message and the expectations and the customer experience throughout the process. If you have somebody who's ultimately responsible for making a final decision on how all of the pieces connect, it works really well versus other structures where you potentially create silos. And even with the best intentions of the leaders working together, there's still going to be a difference in opinion on how to do it. Sometimes that healthy debate creates the right type of tension, but other times it gets in the way, and I have seen it in the past where it got in the way and it created a dynamic where the sales org, for example, was functioning one way and customer success was functioning completely differently. And so the expectations that are set in the sales process are then not met once they get into the customer success process. And so my goal was to be able to break those down so that we make sure we have the linkages and it looks more like a conveyor belt as a customer, where you're getting treated by the right experts at the right point in your journey.
Makes absolute sense. Yeah. And also puts the customer first, so that you basically are the one responsible so that the customer has a good experience all the way, and you make sure that the teams are working together. So it's a good setup. And so you had an interesting career. So you look super young, but you're a seasoned sales professional, and you were at different companies with different kinds of stages where they are, or kind of product market fits, so to say. Just to sum up, you were at LogMeIn and then Drift and then also at OWL now. And in your opinion, how did your role change for those different companies, and what is the difference between those companies in your point of view?
Yeah, they're very different businesses on the surface in terms of how they operate. And even if I was also at CarGurus, which again is like a different business. If you were to compare the four of them side by side, you would see similarity in that they were technology. But then when you get underneath and look at the go-to-markets of each of them, it's different. And so I think what I have tried to look for, I think when joining a company is, especially when you think about it from a sales point of view, is how differentiated is the technology, and why is somebody going to choose your product or service or brand over somebody else's? Like, what's the draw? What's the magnet that is pulling them in? And at LogMeIn, it was, we were a product-led growth company. We we made a decision. We were one of the first real successful freemium businesses that went to market. It was before kind of everyone was doing product-led growth and freemium became a common business. And I remember our CEO at the time, Michael Simon, saying when he was first going to try to raise money, this concept of giving something away that was so valuable was foreign on a lot of investors. And a lot of investors passed on LogMeIn in early days because they didn't understand the business model well. And so we created this product-led growth and this freemium model where you give something away for free to create brand recognition that is of value, and essentially take something that had been sold and commoditize it. And for us, it was desktop remote control. We just made it a commodity. And then from there, you can attract people in and build premium products on top of it that are really catering to that audience that's using your free product. So we were able to build a really high velocity inside sales motion by creating a trial to paid model. So it was, relatively low cost, highly efficient and fast. And it was a SaaS business. It was subscription as a service. And then I went to CarGurus, and CarGurus was a marketplace. That was very different. We were creating a marketplace so that car dealerships here in the US in particular, they would pay us because we could draw more eyeballs to the cars that they were trying to sell. We were better at traffic acquisition, algorithmic traffic acquisition than anybody else, including the auto traders and true cars that had been around for a long time. So we created a different experience. And the consumer experience was we cared about the ultimate buyer versus the existing businesses that cared more about the dealer and their customer. Like, we knew if we got the right car into the right hands of the right buyer, that we could build a better model overall. And that proved out. And then you go to Drift, and Drift was another subscription as a service business, but it wasn't a product-led growth company. It was very much kind of telling a story. And we were a category creator. We created this space of conversational marketing that didn't exist before. And the difference there is that you're selling twice. You're selling that conversational marketing is something that a business needs to be successful. And then you're talking about the product and going through the process of selling the actual product that you sell. Fast forward to Owl, and now I'm in hardware for the first time in my career, which is different altogether because not only the supply chain process that becomes a really important factor in the business, but also the go-to-market is very different in that you have, it tends to be more channel heavy when you get into hardware in terms of being able to distribute lots of product. It's a one-time cost as opposed to a recurring subscription. Although I think, from a technology standpoint, we hope to get into the subscription business and believe that we can surround our hardware with valuable, continuing, ongoing software offerings. So yeah, they all look like different companies, but each of them has been exceptional in solving the problem. And I think that's the most important part from my point of view, from a sales and marketing and customer success standpoint, is like, do you feel like you can stand out as a company with your service or offering and how you're attacking the specific problem that you've chosen to attack with your product?
Thanks a lot. Super interesting. In your opinion, how did the B2B sales leader role evolve over time?
Great question. I remember my first job out of university was with a company called Sophos, which is it's a UK based, at the time they were just antivirus, and we were pretty far down the stack in terms of antivirus vendors that would be chosen by a company. And back then it was all, the top salespeople were sort of the storytellers. They were the big storytellers. It wasn't necessarily like who could mine the database. It was, if you could get a meeting and get on site and get in front of somebody and tell a wonderful story and develop a relationship, take them out to a steak dinner and have a few cocktails together, is like, that was how sales were done for a long time. And I think up until March, there were still businesses that were operating that way.
Yeah, the don't vapor method, huh? Like,
Yeah,
I didn't.
yeah, exactly. It is the Don Draper method, and I think it was, it was largely effective. And even if you go and you read, when Mark Benioff started Salesforce, the early days of Salesforce, they were doing those kind of small dinners and getting customers together with potential customers, and we were going through that process. And I think it's, the people side of it. It's wanting to develop that relationship and do business with somebody that you have camaraderie with, you can develop some trust and rapport with. But that's how all of that was really how all of sales, especially in technology, has been built. And I think what has happened over time is, as you see like a product-led growth models emerge and become more important, and SaaS businesses emerge and become more important, the model has shifted. And in some cases, it's a mix. In other cases, you have the extreme, which is it's all digital and it's all online, and you don't interact with a salesperson at all. And I think depending on your business and what you sell and how you service it, all of those models can work. It's really about, it's as a company, it's more important than ever. As a young company, it's more important than ever to establish a clean and firm product market fit as early as possible, because then that should dictate what your go-to-market model looks like, what your, especially in B2B, like what your sales model looks like. Are you going to be high velocity, or are you going to be upmarket enterprise platform solution sales? Do you want to be high velocity but no touch? Or do you want to be high velocity with a touch sales process? All of those are so different in terms of how you invest in them and the types of people and expertise that you would hire in the business to support it. So I do think it's changed in that there was really one model that worked for a long, long time. And after the bubble burst, really, when you started to see, Salesforce is really credited with being the first proper cloud company who's been successful. But then those cloud businesses that arose after Salesforce, you started to see that model slowly shift away from the traditional thing that we saw, the steak dinner and field sales model, into the realization that you could do some of this digitally, and you could do some of it with a high velocity inside sales team that was using the phone or using video conferencing to sell the product. So it's very, I'd say it's very different now than it was 15 to 20 years ago.
Mhm. Yes, definitely. I mean, the internet also gave you the channel to do many things much faster and on scale. And yeah, it's maybe the middle ground now. So not spamming everybody, not going out in mass, but also not having only this one-on-one where you have to invest a lot of time and effort. It always depends on the product. Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. But I see in all these conversations that I have with CMOs and chief sales people that they think that somehow the human side should come back in some capacity, more or less, yes, but it got lost a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think about this notion?
I agree completely. And I think the definitions of what is human and what is personalized are very different throughout the market, because I think it's hard to do personalization and true understanding of a human at scale. And that's what there's a lot of newer companies that talk about that, like doing it at scale, and that their technologies do it at scale. I think the reality is people are smart, and buyers are smart. They can understand whether or not you truly are trying to understand who they are and what they do and what they care about. They can also understand that if you send a personalized email through a system that is sending hundreds behind it to other people that is also personalized, people are smart enough to be able to read between the lines and understand that you probably didn't spend a whole lot of time trying to figure out who I am or what I care about. So I think a lot of companies say they are more human in their approach. I don't think all of them are actually walking the walk.
Yeah, absolutely understand what you mean. Let's flip it let's say, I mean, you're also on the side of some sellers who want to sell something to you. So can you give us an example of cold outreach to someone you don't know that didn't work? I mean, that's probably very easy because you receive a lot of stuff that doesn't work, but also an example of what worked and where you responded and what that person did differently.
Yeah, it's always in a situation in terms of, you know, what I respond to. It's always in a situation where it's clear they put in the effort to at least make an attempt at trying to understand or uncover whether or not the product or service they had to offer potentially address the challenge that I have. And like, look, I actually, when I started my career, I was a rung below an SDR. I started as a sales admin, which was a fancy title for the person who went and got coffee for the sales team and processed their orders and did the grunt work. I had to earn my way into an SDR role. So I am as empathetic as I possibly could be to how difficult that job is, especially when you're going cold, and especially if you're trying to sell something that has been commoditized. Like, that is a very, very difficult job. So I think but to be, I think to catch somebody, especially a senior leader who has a lot on their plate, they're balancing email and Slack and their team and one-on-ones and strategic meetings and planning. I think to catch somebody, like, you've got to be able to present yourself as somebody who can potentially offer a solution to one of the top priorities that you're trying to face right now. So for example, if I were in the process of trying to figure out how I was going to train my young and growing sales team on a sales methodology, and we want to get training lined up in the next 6 months, and somebody reached out and said, want to let you know, I worked with a company that's about your size, that has a growing sales team. They have a high velocity inside sales program. They have implemented this sales methodology and have had success, and here's why. That's somebody I would respond to, because it's a priority for me at that point. And they have taken the time to understand a little bit, as much as you can from the outside, about what our business is, and have maybe made some hypothetical leaps in the process, which is okay. Because then you're demonstrating that you have taken time to think about it and that you actually believe you may have a solution. Like, you can read between someone who's just trying to get a meeting and someone who's generally trying to be a matchmaker between a solution and a problem. And the one who's trying to play matchmaker is the one that I would typically respond to, because you can tell that and sure, it has to match a priority. But at the very least, you know, I can send a response and say, this is thoughtful. It's not a priority for me, but thanks for the outreach. So they know, like, you should know as an SDR, if your message is resonating and landing, or if you're not getting responses, if you have a low response rate, you know, typically that's an indication that what you're sending is high level and not very personalized and isn't going to land.
Yeah. And in this specific example that you mentioned, it should be possible, for example, to research. There's data available where you can see how much is a certain part of the organization growing. And you could see that you are hiring many people. And so you could have the correct hypothesis at this stage of your company, at this size, you may be implementing some groundwork that you may not have yet. So, I mean, to generalize, it's all about timing and understanding what kind of need someone has and trying to match this at the right point of time. I mean, that's kind of the holy grail. But if you think about it hard in your customer group, there are some use cases, maybe not for everybody, but for parts of it where you can do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a, and you should, you know, if you're part of a company that has enough data points, you should start to see some trends emerge within industries, segments, countries, employee size groups, whatever it is. So, you know, typically you can start to whittle that down to a place where you roughly know what your target looks like. You roughly know where you have the best product market fit and the story seems to resonate the strongest, and spend your time there. And if you do, yeah, then it becomes a math problem in terms of how many people you reach out to and how many meetings you're going to set and how many opportunities you're going to create, and then where your win rate is against those opportunities. But I think there's, because, the sales pendulum has swung so far to data driven, daily KPIs, weekly KPIs, how many pieces of outreach, how many cold calls did you make, how many emails did you send, that you can get so focused on the inputs that you lose sight of the outputs and what matters, right? It's the Benjamin Franklin quote of never confuse motion with action. And I think there's a lot of salespeople and a lot of marketers that can fall into that category of, I'm doing a lot of things, and why am I not having success? It's because there's a lot of motion, there's a lot of stuff that's happening, but it's not actually contributing to the outcome that you want to drive. So you need to look at your inputs and what you're doing and spend more time on the quality of your inputs to make sure that it's driving the outcome you want.
Yeah, I just had to think about training in sports. It's absolutely similar. I mean, you can train a lot of hours without a real structure, and you don't get anywhere in terms of results, getting faster, stronger, or whatever. Or you can have a structured plan, look at the right things, do the right things, and then you see results, and you're not even like exhausted as if you would do too much training or the wrong training.
Yeah, it's the analogy we would use in CrossFit is that it's more about technique than load. For example, if you're doing an Olympic lift, it's not about how much weight you have on there. You can only get better if your technique is perfect. So it's focusing more on quality versus the quantity, like how much weight and how fast you can do the reps. It doesn't matter if your quality isn't good, because you're never going to be able to improve. You're not going to be able to make the gains that you want to make if you're not first focused on the technique.
Yeah. So now let's go to, you're just building the organization, and you're also implementing the ground rules on how these different positions should operate. Like, for example, let's start with marketing, for example, and then maybe talk about sales and then customer success. What I would be interested in is how do you incentivize those different groups within your organization the right way?
Yeah, it's a good question, especially in this phase, because most people who join a startup company are you'd classify as generalists. People who like to do lots of different things, wear lots of different hats. They may be owning the demand gen function, but they're also going to own a relationship with a partner. They're going to work on the swag or the internal gift gives that go to your company. They're going to help set up an executive offsite. Like, they're just going to do lots of different things. And those people tend to have a lot of success in startups, because if you're joining a startup, the expectation is that your job description probably only captures about 30% of what you're going to end up doing. As you move into the scale phase, most of the hires that you bring in, and even the people who existed on the team before, start to specialize more, because you need expertise in areas where you don't have it. And you need somebody who wakes up thinking every day, I am responsible for demand generation and driving leads to the sales team. It's not part of my job, it is my job. So that I know that that part of the engine, that piece of the machine, is functioning as efficiently as possible. And so what it does is it changes, from an incentive standpoint, as you asked, I think it changes as we bring people into the team, because they trying to make it clearer in terms of what their job is and what their responsibility is. And as we add into the team and we can bring in more specialists, some of those hats start to get doled out to other people who can own them completely. And it's been referred to as kind of passing your Legos, or being able to hand off the pieces of the business that you used to own as a part of your very big function, but now you need to hand it off to somebody who's going to run that for you. And so even on the sales side, our first sales hires who came in, it was responding to leads, it was talking to existing customers, it was reaching out to prospective customers, it was doing all of it. It was scrambling to kind of do what you could. And now, you know, part of my responsibility is, all right, let's organize it. Let's get it into a place where we have regional territories, we have specific responsibilities, we have specific accounts that people are going to work. We now have a team of account managers that are going to sell to our existing customers. We have SDRs who are going to process, qualify the leads and set up meetings for the account executives. And so you start to get to a place where the incentive becomes more clear, because you know, when we were just building out the sales team, it's just get to your number by any means necessary. And now it's get to your number, and here's the plan of attack for how you're going to do that. And this is who you're going to be responsible for. And so you can kind of start to build this predictable engine that, as opposed to kind of a reactive engine, we can start to become much more deliberate about how we go about doing things. And then as you look at it on the customer success side, from an incentive standpoint, we're admittedly still trying to figure out what the right thing is there long term. You know, you have the overarching goals like NPS and making sure that our customer NPS is high, but we still
So just to clarify, if some people don't know, Net Promoter Score, so it's basically assessing the happiness of your customer with your product.
Exactly. The question is asked essentially like, how likely are you to recommend the Meeting Owl Pro to a friend or a colleague? And it's like NPS scores are everything in terms of your customer service, and even in the feedback you get within each individual NPS score, as you aggregate that over time, it should drive your product roadmap. It should let you know where you have competitive disadvantages in the market. It should let you know from a quality standpoint, like what level you're at and where you want to focus on improving the core. It's I would argue the most valuable feedback mechanism there is. And NPS score, naturally, the higher it is, the more happy your overall base is. And so if you're on the customer success side and you're responsible for implementing, onboarding, teaching everybody how to use it, NPS is a direct reflection of somebody's enjoyment of using the product and whether it does what they expected it to do. So NPS is kind of the easy one, but then underneath it, I think we're trying to figure out, are there any internal metrics that we start to use to measure it, whether it's number of meetings held or time online. But you have to be careful about where you draw lines and create these proxy metrics for your business, because sometimes they can become the North Star that is actually pointed in the wrong direction. And so we're going to take our time to learn and make sure that we understand from our customers the things that matter most to them. And then I think we can build the KPIs as we're really building out our customer success team for the first time here.
Mm-hmm. And how do you incentivize marketing? Is it like on a lead basis or is it different?
No, it hasn't been on a lead basis. And the marketing team has really been tied to the revenue plan in this business.
That's good, yeah.
And yeah, but not directly in a, not kind of the microcosm of leads or pipeline. I think we will get there. It just like, it hasn't been, it's been such a brand driven company. And I think the early years of Owl Labs, much of our success was driven by selling product on the website, our partnership with large online e-tailers. We just built out our touch sales motion for the first time this year. So we will shift a part of that marketing focus and function toward demand gen activities and creating pipeline for the team. But much of the focus has been around brand so that we create the magnet that draws people in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we touched it a little bit, but maybe you can do us a favor of summarizing, in your opinion, the job of marketing.
Yeah, I think, and look, I think marketing is a supremely important function for any company, but in particular a business like ours, where the brand I think the our brand is pretty big, because with brand, you can outkick your coverage with brand. You can actually make yourself stand out as a company, even if you're a relatively small business that has 40 or 50 employees. You can separate yourself from the pack if you have a brand that sounds different, feels different, has a different tone with the way you come to market versus the other players that are out there. So I think marketing plays a big role in sort of creating who the company is to the world. And then as you start to mature, as we've started to mature, the roles of marketing start to become more clearly defined and specialized, where within the marketing team, you have people who are creating content for specific reasons. It could be brand content, so it's about kind of the broader audience, or it could be sales content, so it's about case studies or white papers to support selling to specific types of customers. Could be lead generation campaigns. Eventually, we'll probably get back to events. I mean, for us, CES is the biggest event for technology and hardware products, and it did not happen in the first week of the year in Vegas as it has before. It was all done online and virtual. But it will get back to events. And so marketing plays this role of being able to create broad awareness of who we are and who your brand is, but then also start to bring it down the funnel to the point where, you know, you get to this mid funnel place where then the humans on the sales side start to interact with potential buyers, so they can really fulfill the last mile or two in the information gathering process for somebody who is trying to make a considered purchase of your product.
Mhm. And in the pre-interview, you mentioned that you have an emphasis of using the voice of your customers in marketing. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. It's you know, I think there's two ways of marketing. There is strong outward marketing, where it's a company projecting themselves and who they are and what they believe and which problem they believe they're solving. And sometimes that contains customer feedback, many times it does not. I like what Owl Labs has done from a marketing standpoint, because we have used our customer feedback to create our messaging for the market. So the reason it resonates more is because it's less about how we see ourselves and more about how our customers see us and how they interact with us and what they say about us. And we've used that, the momentum of what's happened in the market to craft a lot of our brand and design, content, things that we put out there. It is largely in the voice of what our customers have said about us. And that makes it a lot of fun, because it feels like then you're not kind of pushing that rock uphill of trying to make everyone believe what you want them to believe. The larger market already believes the things that we're saying because they're the ones who have said it.
It's amazing. It's really speaking with the voice of the customer by using the voice of the customer. It sounds so simple. Huh? It's amazing that not many companies are doing it.
Yeah, it's not I think it's a hard, you wouldn't be able to do that on day one. I think you can do it as a company when you get to a point where you have clear product market fit, you have good product NPS and people who are saying really positive things about you, but you also know what your flaws are, you know what your gaps are and things that need to be addressed. If you have all of that in a package, you can take that to your messaging in the market and how you bring yourselves to market. And I think create a big brand voice that sounds real and logical and authentic. And I think our team at Owl has done an amazing job at being able to do just that.
Can you give us a few examples on how you execute it, like in at Owl? Do you use testimonials? Do you use videos? How do you use the voice of the customer?
Yeah, we do a lot of testimonials, a lot of case studies, and you know, we do it in a, God, it feels like we're putting them out there so frequently, and it's because our customers want to talk to us about how they're using it and what it has changed in the dynamic. There was one I was reading yesterday that was just launched, and it was about an aluminum company in Belgium who's a customer, but they have distributed offices globally, and they interact with their global office teams all of the time, and they were tired of having to use this kind of tunnel on their webcam to have meetings. And so they bought the meeting owl and they put it in the middle of the table. And it was their CEO who talked about, man, it's created this immersive experience. It has really, because now you can interact with your colleagues the way you would if you were in the room. It has changed the dynamic of their meetings and how they engage. So it's wonderful to read those stories. What's even more interesting to me is the consistency. It's the thread that you could replace that company's name with almost any other company's name and hear similar stories about how it's brought their teams or their meetings with clients that feels closer together and more human, because they're able to experience the room and what is happening in the room. And then on the other side with education, because we have a lot of users in education, a lot of classrooms who are using the meeting owl, because it creates a space where the teacher can use their classroom as they would. They can move about and use the whiteboard or use the smart board. They can use the assets. They can teach how they've always taught and don't feel like they have to be stuck right in front of their laptop, in front of the camera to teach to the students who are at home. And depending on which market you're in, there's been a lot of hybrid classrooms where some of the students are in the class and some of the students are at home. So if you're at home, you get to see your classmates in the classroom. You get to see who's raising their hand. You get to see who's passing notes to each other. It's like you're there with them. And I think that, and when we see the testimonials and what customers are saying, again, it's easy to take that and broadcast it because the threads are so familiar. We're hearing the same stories over and over again about what we're solving, which is great.
That's definitely a big problem. They talk about it in the media all the time about the problem of homeschooling right now. So definitely a better solution if a teacher who's not used to teaching online with a laptop or a computer can do his own style, how he used to do it. I absolutely get the point of that. That's cool. So, I mean, in the end, then Corona, I mean, it's not good for people, especially who suffer from it. But for the business, it was like an accelerator, I assume, for you.
Yeah, it has been. And it's, you know, it's interesting because when the company was founded, it was founded on the premise of, it's the belief that people should be able to work from anywhere. And companies who look to hire the best talent and the best fit for their culture and the expertise that they need, you should be able to hire that anywhere. Now, this was a few years ago, you know, long before the pandemic. And so things have changed quite a bit since, but it has been an accelerant. And what's interesting is that it's not only accelerated our business, I think it's accelerated the thinking now of most, certainly information companies, where you have all information workers, is thinking, you know, why do we put ourselves in a car or on a train for an hour each way a day and commute into a place that is less comfortable, that gives us less work-life balance because we don't see our kids or our spouse or our significant other or our dog more often? And so it's changed the discussion in terms of, after this, once everyone's vaccinated, what work life looks like afterward. And it's fascinating because I think our technology will be there to support that movement, to support the idea of hybrid or distributed teams, or even if you're in the office and 100% of your team is in the office, you're still going to have to interact with clients, with other offices, with other people. And so the need, I think, has been more pronounced. And now the general global population of information workers is more in tune with and comfortable with the idea of having more of a hybrid model, meaning working from home some days, working in the office some days. I saw, I think recently, I believe it was Dropbox who announced that they were going to increase the stipend in the future for when they return for people who aren't based near their headquarters to fly in and visit the headquarters more often. And so it's things like that that change the approach to how we work, that certainly for us as a company are long-term benefits once we get on the other side of this.
Yeah, definitely. I would have so many other questions left, but we are out of time. So I have to close now with our 5 rapid fire questions, but you can
Excellent.
take your time to answer. So there's enough time for that, I'm sure.
Okay.
I mean, that's an easy one for you. Maybe you can focus on the second part of the question. What do you do to keep body and mind fit and sharp?
Yeah, well, I think the two are directly interconnected, and I know on the days that I work out, I feel much sharper than the days that I do not. And so I think physical improvements lead to mental improvements, and mental improvements lead to physical improvements, and it's just one big cycle. So for me, yeah, the workout thing is a big one. I read quite a bit and on various topics, but try to read a bit, whether it's, you know, just staying up in the Wall Street Journal and what's happening in the world, to reading the book I'm reading right now is called The Talent War. And it's a book just about taking some of the special forces, the work that they've done to be able to understand intrinsic characteristics of a human being and whether or not they're going to be a good fit for their organization, and then applying that to business and how you hire people. So I believe in the whole cycle of learning, growing, and then if I need a different type of therapy, I'll pick up the guitar and sing a song.
That's a good one. Your favorite business book?
My favorite, it seems to change.
Right now.
It's, well, I'll say the one that has resonated and that I've probably quoted and looked at the most is Powerful by Patty McCord. So Patty McCord was she was the head of people and talent at Netflix for about 14 years. And so she was there early days when there were 40 or 50 people, and was really the right-hand person to Reed Hastings as they built that business. And as they went from DVD by mail service to the major studio and streaming company that they are now. I also had a chance to I had lunch with her last year or the year before, because we were speaking at the same event, and she's just a wonderful, wonderful human being. So, and her book is all about it's people and talent, and really how you, her experiences in going through a scaling company, and how the need for people and the types of people you bring in changes over time, and how to deal with that level of growth from a people standpoint. It's just a wonderful book. And I think for any company that's going through massive scale is a nice reference and resource.
And I like the culture of Netflix. Definitely I'm going to have a look at this book.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Favorite business leader you follow?
Favorite business leader I follow? Well, it's, you know, this is another one where there are sales leaders and mentors that I've had in my career. Like I look at, there's a gentleman who's running sales right now for a company here called Airtable named Seth Shaw, who was my mentor and sales leader when I was at LogMeIn, who taught me an awful lot in a very short amount of time. We'll always look up to him and be thankful for what I learned from him. But then you also look at people out there, you know, the glass breakers of the world, like an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos, who have kind of forcefully changed the way we operate and think. And I think what the barriers are for entry into the hard things like space travel, the logistics puzzle that Amazon has seemingly solved. Those are leaders that I don't necessarily know that I'd want to work for either one of them, but I appreciate what they do for us as humankind. And you almost need a level of ego that is outside of anything I could comprehend to be able to make those types of changes. So I don't know that I have a favorite, honestly. I like pieces of a lot of different leaders, and know that sometimes some of the ways they go about it, I wouldn't be able to do based on who I am, but I appreciate that they can.
Awesome. Who should our next podcast guest be?
Well, I already named him. I would reach out to Seth Shaw, who I think is one of the great sales leaders who crosses from, small business to mid-market to enterprise. He's been in high velocity. He has been in enterprise solution selling and kind of everything in between. He was, like I said, he ran the global sales team at LogMeIn, but he also worked at Reich and built out a nice team there before that business was acquired. And he spent the last 3 or 4 years at InVision building a pretty special company there. He also just finished hiking the Pacific Coast Trail, or the Pacific Crest Trail. It's basically going from Mexico to Canada along the West Coast. And it took him about 4 months. And I think anybody who can accomplish that with a wife and 2 young children is a pretty special and impressive human being. He'd be worth talking.
I try to get him as a guest. And my last question, you can directly address our audience. Is there anything they can help you with?
I think for sales and marketing, customer success folks out there, I always want to know things that are working. And I don't mean that in a like kind of new tool or tactic kind of way. I mean it in the personalization and your ability to connect with humans, like the companies that are doing this well, the sales leaders that are doing this well, the ones who have been successful at settling the pendulum in the middle of the clock as opposed to over rotating to either side. If there are best practices or things that people are doing well, I would love to hear about it, because there's very few examples I see out there of companies that are truly executing on their ability to personalize their marketing and sales outreach. I think customer success, that's going to be more one-to-one, but for marketing and sales, if you feel as though you're doing personalization really well and you choose quality over quantity, I would love to hear from you.
Awesome. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, I probably the easiest way is on LinkedIn. I'm there. I see the messages that come in. So just come find me on LinkedIn. And no, I know you probably aren't as familiar with American football, but there's a guy over here named Josh Allen, who is the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, and is a rising star in the NFL. I am not that Josh Allen. I'm much less talented physically than he is.
Very good. But we can find you as Josh Allen, working for OLabs as a CRO. And I'm going to put the link of your company and of your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Thank you so much. I learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure everyone else did too. It was a pleasure to have you as our guest, Josh.
Thank you, Sammy. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Awesome. Bye.